Well, good morning to all the beloveds of God who gather for this time of devotions. It is August 4th, and it is Tuesday. This morning we are going to be focusing on Psalm 46, but our topic is actually going to be mysticism and looking at it through one of our ancestors in the faith, Hildegard of Bingen. I am Heather E. Clausen, pastor of Bethel Lutheran Church and the United Methodist Church, both in Herman, Minnesota. Psalm 46 is a psalm that leads us to hear more clearly how important it is to have that deep connection with God. And when it speaks to us in the midst of the realities of life, it reminds us that even when the world is swirling around us, we have both the opportunity and the necessity to find times to center ourselves on God. So let me share these words, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and what it has meant through the generations. Certain verses. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city. It shall not be moved. God will help it when the morning dawns. The nations are in an uproar. The kingdoms totter. He utters his voice. The earth melts. My focus verse this morning is verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Well, we finished a series not too long ago on our Sundays talking about beguiled by beauty. And what we talked about was contemplation. How do we find the time, not only the time, but the willingness to still our minds and dial down deeper to know God? And what it invites us to when we come to those moments is then, as life unfolds and in the midst of the difficulties, we are more mindful of God in the midst of everything swirling around us. So many, many years ago, my older brother, who is an ancient history historian, specifically Alexander is his area of expertise. But many, many years ago, he introduced me to the music of Hildegard of Bingen. Hildegard lived a long time ago, 1098 to 1179. She was, in her later years, a Benedictine abbess, head of a monastery. But Hildegard was visited by visions. And for a long time, she feared sharing those. And what resulted was her health declined. When she fully responded to God and God's intention that her visions be heard and be shared, her health was restored. What she taught us so much is about that depth of relationship with God. And the mystics throughout all the generations have kept alive our awareness of our union with God and thus with everything in the whole world. I was so moved by not only her music, but also her writing, that several years ago I went on a winter, yes, in the snow, retreat in a cabin in the woods. Just myself, Bailey, her music, her books, journals, out in this cabin, in no contact with other human beings for that time of retreat. Where I was, they would not come out to your cabin unless you needed something like firewood or birdseed. And the solitude, before I went, I wasn't too sure about. I thought, what am I going to do? What is this going to be like? It was a beautiful experience. And I didn't feel, as I have many years past before that, that anxiety about needing to have contact with people. And it did allow me to dial down deeper through her visions, her writings, her music, but ultimately deeper to that relationship with God. And she was a prolific writer. I have a whole bookshelf of her writings. But in one of her most famous ones, called Scivias, this is what she said: "You understand so little of what is around you because you do not use what is within you." What she taught, very simply, from that deep relationship with God, that going down, going down, going down, in times of silence and solitude to encounter God, and then bringing the wealth of spiritual insight and movement forward for people to those around her. She, not only to her religious community, but she wrote, she received letters, she advised people, she even wrote to the Pope. She was a force to be reckoned with. And that force to be reckoned with of Hildegard of Bingen came from that deep mystical connection with God. When we talk about mystics, and it seems like this woo type thing, what we're really talking about is people. People who have an immediate or direct sense of the presence of God, and that they get through this contemplation, that it flows out of, and it also results in a deeper connection, deeper relationship with God. In Hildegard, we hear the living out of that, "Be still and know that I am God." For her to have influenced through generations and generations, including me, to influence others through her writing, through her life, through her music, she needed to take that time to be still and to know God, to develop that deep reliance on God, so that everything she did flowed from that profound and deep connection. We have that ability in each of us, that mystical ability to take that opportunity to develop a deeper and deeper and deeper relationship with God. And through that relationship, to allow what God intends to flow. And that's exactly what Hildegard did. She believed in the presence of God in all living things, not just humanity. She learned of ways to cure illnesses and wrote about that as well. Natural healing through herbs and other means. All of that came from her deep awareness of the work of God through all of creation, and how what God has gifted us with has been a gift to not only appreciate, but to find ways to care for others through that. Be still and know that I am God has been a verse that occurs to me so often. Without picking up a Bible, it is there. And it is a verse that, as it spoke to Hildegard, as it spoke to many throughout the generations, reminds us that we need to take those opportunities in that time to be in contemplation, to be in silence, to be in solitude. It doesn't mean we need to remove ourselves completely from the world. Even if she was in a monastery, she was connected to many outside of that community, so that these visions, these words from God to her, could influence others as God intended. But it does mean taking whatever opportunities we have so that outside of those moments of silence and solitude with God, we have what we need to live into all around us and all the chaos and craziness, and we have both crisis and opportunity in our world today. And I think to catch the opportunity, we need to think about holy listening, willingness to take that deep time of listening, that deep time with God. It is so we can carry that presence of God, that awareness of God in all that we do. Those of you who are internet searchers, I invite you to learn a little bit more of Hildegard of Bingen. Listen to her music. Maybe even use the music for a quiet time to invite you into that time. Mystics are those who are aware of God's presence, who desire it, who seek it. That is a part of us as well. And so the invitation we always have is to take that time. Be still and know that I am God. As the psalmist says, it's not because the world has suddenly become quiet. It's not because there aren't difficulties that swirl around them. But it is because God's presence is always there, always available, always with that richness that can guide us to live in the world in the way that the world needs and that we need as well. Go in peace. Amen.